So, I got to see Star Wars. I'm like 5 days late to the party. Alright, enough of that. So I was away, out of town, in a position where I was unable to see this movie. Over the weekend, we left Thursday night, and I got back yesterday afternoon, and I finally saw this movie. I've sat on it for a day now. I did my best this time around to avoid letting myself get too excited for this movie. I think that was a problem that I had last time I saw The Force Awakens. I feel as though I allowed myself to succumb to the hype a little bit, and was willing to excuse a lot of the flaws I had with the movie, because I did have a lot rewatching that movie, especially. And so I was doing my best to not allow myself to get that way. And what helped this time around was I saw a lot of really good things and I saw some mediocre things. So I was kind of going in with an open mind, and I walked out of this movie, and I have to say, I found myself disappointed. This is not the worst movie I've ever seen. It doesn't come close. But is it great? Not really at all. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that really does not work. I wasn't feeling the hood anymore. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that doesn't work, but there's a lot of stuff in this movie that does work too. A lot of things that were actually improved upon from The Force Awakens, but a lot of things that also declined in quality from Episode 7. I'm not going to be spoiling this. People have been saying they've been struggling to watch reviewers review this movie because they can't work around spoilers. I don't know how that's possible. I think it's very easy to talk about this movie without really getting into spoilers. That, I guess that depends what you consider spoilers, though, because, like, if you're one of the people that stayed away from everything, then maybe don't watch this video, but if you're one of those people, odds are you've seen the movie already, because I am going to be talking about plot, because that's a big thing that I want to talk about. So I'll talk about what I liked about this movie first, because there are things. First and foremost, pretty much everything and anything that Rey is in works. It's her sequences with Luke are all pretty great for the most part. And the whole dynamic between her and Kylo Ren, I thought was great. I thought it wasn't forced. It wasn't contrived. It was natural, and I felt it, and it kind of put me on the edge of my seat, and I was interested to see where that was going to go next. I really liked that, and I think they did a really good job with that. And if that's spoilery, I don't think it is. I think I'm being cryptic enough, but if it is, I apologize. Um, Ryan Johnson did a good job in that regard of the story. I was always interested when that part was on screen. However, unfortunately, that's not all that's on screen, but we'll get more into that later. Um, Visually, this movie is really nice, except for like a couple visual effects that were kind of weird. The practical effects look good. Um, Technically, this movie's good. There's some weird sound mixing stuff every now and then, but like that's nitpicky and it's excusable. That shit happens. It's not a flawless film. But visually and technically, for the strong majority of the film, it works. And Ryan Johnson had a vision. You can tell where he wanted to take this thing. But the problem is, I don't think he was given the full reign he should have been given to make this movie. I think there was some Disney interference. And if there wasn't, I'd be very surprised. Because the biggest issue I have with this film is that it's incredibly inconsistent. Um, in style, in tone, in feel, in pretty much every regard. Because, like I said about the Rey stuff and the Luke and Kylo Ren stuff, that's pretty dark for the most part. It's emotional, it's pertinent, it's key. There are some jokes and whatnot, sure, but I mean, it's pretty down to earth. But Finn has this storyline going on with one of the characters that was introduced, Rose, and that storyline is pure and utter garbage. And if it kept coming back every now and then, it would be excusable. but it's like cut back to as much as Rey and Luke and Rey and Kylo Ren. And so for that reason, it's not excusable. It's a big part of the plot, and it's something that I feel needs to be discussed for its lack of quality. That's where the problems in the script come in. The dialogue becomes cheesy. It tries to be funny and it's not. It tries to be charming and it's forced, and it's shoving shit down your throat. It's very in your face. Um, the performances are not great, even from John Boyega. He's not so good in those parts. And overall, it just feels out of place with the entire rest of the movie. And I have to assume that's where Disney might have come in, because that part does feel like PG compared to the rest of the PG-13 movie. And it's off-putting. I don't have a problem with them trying to appeal to several different audiences. I have a problem with them not knowing who they're trying to appeal to, because that's the feeling I got. I don't know what they were going for with this movie. I don't know if they were trying to make it impactful and emotional or fun and lighthearted, because they keep switching between the two in a way that doesn't work. Maybe it's editing, but I think for the most part, it's writing and it's story writing, it's narrative, and that's where the problems lie in this movie, where a good majority of the problems lie in this movie. And it's not something that I can just, throw away, because it's a big deal and it's supposed to be a big plot point. Now, granted, I think there did need to be like a storyline with Finn going on. I think they simply chose poorly and did a bad job picking what that storyline was going to be and how they executed it. I think there's something more interesting with more, because there's a lot of potential in the storyline. A lot of people don't like Benicio del Toro's character, but he's a character with potential. Something, or a character I'd almost like to see them do again, with doing it right, getting rid of his lisp, which was fucking ridiculous, and making him an interesting character as opposed to someone you knew exactly what was going to happen the second he was introduced. It's a very predictable film, too, on top of all of this. For a movie that marketed itself without giving anything away, not wanting to show off anything, it's pretty easy to guess how this movie is going to end, and what's going to happen at the end of most scenes. It's really not tough if you really put your mind to it. But just in general, that whole aspect of the movie doesn't work. And that's a big part of the movie. Now, like I said, most of the other stuff works, but you find yourself leaving going, that was mediocre, because half of the movie's good and the other half is just bad. So it's almost hard to judge this movie as one movie. I think, like I said, there's a lot of potential in that other storyline. There's a lot of something to work with. I think more Poe Dameron, more Captain Phasma, more of that, which was lacking. Laura Dern's character is awful. She has this like turning point that is so out of nowhere and completely just like, where the fuck did they pull that from? They just needed the plot to continue on. And it's also almost like no shit that this movie's 2.5 hours long, because they're still setting things up in this movie. They're still introducing things, and they still have to develop things that should have been done in the last movie. Like, we really shouldn't be introducing many new characters. Obviously, there are some, but there's a lot of new stuff in this movie that we have to take time to develop, and most of the time it's done poorly, especially with Rose or Laura Dern or Benicio del Toro, who's the most predictable movie in the entire film, or the most predictable character in the entire film, and it's just wasted. Even though Benicio del Toro does a good job. Like, it's too much. There's too much happening. This movie's just jam-packed full of shit. And it doesn't need to be. There is a really interesting storyline going on with Rey, Luke, and Kylo. And I would have loved to see most of the movie focus on that. You cut 30 minutes off this damn thing. Find something more interesting for Finn to do. And I think you've got yourself a pretty damn good movie. But unfortunately, they didn't do that. They have all this other nonsense going on in the background that's really kind of fucking with you. And it's not... There's this constant feeling of, this isn't right. However, a lot of people who are seeing this movie are willing to put that to the side because it's Star Wars. A lot of people are willing to succumb to the hype, which is, like I said, something I did when I saw The Force Awakens, but I've moved past that since I've rewatched it. And I think people need to recognize flaws a little more, and I think people are willing to excuse them simply because this is a Star Wars film. And as a movie lover, not a Star Wars lover, I think it's unfair to give this series special treatment just because it's Star Wars. If they make a not great movie, I'm going to call it a not great movie. I'm not going to go, well, there was some stuff that I didn't really like, but dude, it's Star Wars. No, there's some stuff I didn't really like, and so it's a mediocre Star Wars movie, and a mediocre movie at that. You know, I was obviously pulling for this movie to be really good. I want the Star Wars franchise to be successful. But since Disney has taken the helms of this franchise, they have yet to make a great movie, in my opinion. Force Awakens is solid. I'd even call it better than this. I think it's at least consistent in tone. There's one storyline really going on that you're able to focus in on and watch and follow and care about. And I think J.J. Abrams maybe even gave in to some of Disney's demands or some things Disney said, but as a result of that, he was able to create a consistent film. Maybe Rian Johnson had a different vision than what Disney had, and so Disney has half of this movie and Rian Johnson has another half. I'm just assuming here. But I would call The Force Awakens a better movie than this, and I feel like it is a little better. There's still not some good stuff about The Force Awakens, but there's also, and I have similar problems with this movie, like bad dialogue. Both of these movies, these new movies, all of their problems really lie in the script. That's where their weaknesses are at, and that's what needs to be, the writer's room is what needs to be fixed before these movies are really going to start being great. Rogue One had a lot of problems, also a lot in the script. We're gonna see how Han Solo turns out with everything that's gone on with that fucking thing, and then hopefully J.J. Abrams coming back for Episode 9. Hopefully they'll fix some of the problems they had. But if these movies keep getting the acclaim they're getting because people are not willing to talk about the issues they have with this simply because it's a Star Wars movie, they're not gonna fix anything. We're just gonna keep getting the same thing, which is not exactly, I don't think, what anybody wants. I think we want something different and fresh. That's what we were all hoping for when they announced this new trilogy, and I hope Rian Johnson's completely set aside trilogy, they'll give him a little more creative control than I feel as though he had on this movie. I think he did have some, but I don't think he had it entirely. I think he should have had more. That's my perspective. I think that was this movie, a lot of it was Disney's fault. Maybe. Again, I don't like making assumptions. Maybe Rian Johnson created an inconsistent film, but I've seen Rian Johnson's movies, and I find it unlikely that he's done that. I don't know. I don't see that being what happened. But again, I could be incorrect. If I had to give the movie a rating, I'd give it a 5 out of 10, maybe a 6. It's a mediocre movie that disappointed me. I was looking for something more, something fresh, something new, something interesting to grasp onto, but I don't think I received that. I think I received something that was just, eh. There's some good stuff. Oh, one thing I will talk about is most of the performances get better. Daisy Ridley's better, Adam Driver's better, and a lot of that comes with the fact that their characters are better in this one. They're a little better than they were in The Force Awakens. Mark Hamill's good. He's not like I don't think he was as good as Harrison Ford was, but he's good. He does a good job. Anyway, what do you guys think? Have you seen Star Wars: The Last Jedi? Have you not seen Star Wars: The Last Jedi? You have. What did you think about it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.